once the interview is all over with, you need to sit down and make certain that you are a polite candidate. A part of that is making certain you have an advantage because some people may forget about the little things, but really when it comes down to developing a long-term relationship, you want to be that person that shows up every day that the other person that just talked to you wants to work with. Now, that being said, that little bit of humanity of saying thank you really goes a long way. People like it. It's just a simple acknowledgement that they exist, they did something worthwhile, and you acknowledge them as you go through. So after the interview, write a thank you message to each interviewer. Now, you have to be careful. One time I walked into an interview and there were 14 people at the table, and I made a really bad decision. I went around and I wanted to shake hands with everybody because that's kind of my nature. But in this case, it was a long, skinny room and everybody stood up. It took almost 5 minutes to get around before I can sit back down. I really messed up the whole timing of the interview. So sometimes you have to use common sense. I lost common sense in that moment. But that being said, I learned that won't happen again. But if I have 4 or 5 people, I am going to shake everybody's hand and greet each one of them individually and try to learn their first name. That's part of it. The same thing applies with these thank you notes. If you got 20 people, one time I had a job interview. I got the job, by the way, but I had 23 people on the committee. How do you sit down and send 23 thank you notes out without looking like you're begging for the job as you go through? So write a thank you message to each interviewer, but use the common sense method. Sometimes, how do you get the addresses of all 23? Are you going to remember the names of them? Sometimes you don't even know the names of everybody on the committee until you walk right in. If it's a matter of one person, certainly send a thank you note. If it's 3, if it's 5, yes, each one gets one. But if you start getting giant committees, use the common sense rule as to should you do that, or should you send an email to the person that coordinated interviews, and please sit down there and have my sincere thank you to each one of them as you go through. Make certain that you contact all your references. You probably already done a good job to let them know and get their permission beforehand. I certainly hope you have. But that being said, make certain you touch base with them so they don't get caught flat-footed by saying, who? Herbie, who? Oh, yeah, Herbie's my friend. Yeah, my friend for 20 years. If you don't sit down there and make certain that you let them know ahead of time, it may have slipped their mind because you asked them 4 months before to be a reference. After the interview, make certain you contact your references to let them know they can expect to have a phone call. And then follow up with a call if you hear nothing after 5 days. And by the way, that's not uncommon. A lot of HR departments, they run at full throttle all the time. Sometimes they don't get back to the candidate. Sometimes the committee is looking on things. Sometimes the committee chair doesn't even move forward for 5 days to 10 days or whatever. Sometimes something else is in there. But if you don't hear anything, call back after 5 days. That's not rude. That's only appropriate on your part. They probably should have let you know. But if they didn't, don't sit down and think about being negative with them. Just say, hey, I'm a candidate and I want to know what's going on. Make certain that you go through and keep track as you go through as to who you talk to, what the name of the place that you applied in as you go through. I think it's a good idea to keep an Excel spreadsheet of all your different contacts. Put as much information as you need to on there as possible. Make certain the name of the company, the date of the interview, as much information about who was on the committee, about the status of it, and if there's anything that you have a positive or negative feeling about it, make it almost like a journal as you go through, and that way you can go back. Is sometimes you don't get the job, but 2 or 3 years later, you might. One time I applied for a job. I had 5 interviews for the job. By the time it was all done, I couldn't come to an agreement with the prospective boss I was going to have. So I thought about it, I'm not going to take the job. So I actually turned down the job, and it was kind of a mutual thing as she went through. They hired somebody else. 2 years later, that guy left in the process, and they called me back for another interview. We had 3 more interviews, and by the time we were all done, some of the issues that were there are now resolved. I took the job, but I tracked what I was doing. That really was a really positive thing because I remembered the names of the people I talked to, and I walked into the meeting for the interviews as, hey, how you doing? And called them by their first name. Those names help an awful lot as you go through. And then make certain, consider sending the follow-up message if it's a matter of you sent something up and saying, hey, here's my resume again, just in case you missed as you go through. rejection follow-up. Sometimes if you didn't get the job, ask questions as you go through. If you have a consultant, especially coordinating the whole search committee or an HR person, ask the question why you didn't get the job. The worst that'll happen is they don't tell you. The best that'll happen, they'll give you 1 or 2 clues about what happened over there. So always sit down and do that. If you do get a job, send a message confirming details of the offer. Okay, so you want me to start, okay, so I'm accepting this position. Here's my understanding of the job. I'm going to start on such and such a date, and my immediate supervisor is this one over here. And my understanding is this is the name of the job, and the salary schedule is over here. Give the details of the offer in case they haven't done it, but make certain you have some of those details down pat, because you want to sit down. If you're going to resign from another employer, you want to make certain that you have a serious job offer before you do that as you go through. And then if you turn down a job offer, you always want to sit down and be professional and make certain you have a sincere message. I really appreciate the time you took and everything else. After the interview process that went through, I just think that this isn't the right thing for me at this time. Make certain you're always nice. And when you leave a job, listen closely to this. When you leave a job, send a tactful, gracious message documenting your resignation. That being said, you need to make certain you do not burn the bridge. Don't get the torches out and says, I hate you people, you've been rotten to me all these years. Even if it's true, you don't do those kind of things because of the fact that eventually you may leave the job you're going to, and somebody else is interested in hiring you for a different job over here, and they're going to call back your last job. And that person too, if you sat down there and smoked them off and they're really mad at you and they hate you the rest of their lives, yes, you don't want to have that happen. Leave the job graciously. Never badmouth them at all. You don't want any word to get back that they were really a crummy company to work for. I couldn't stand my boss. Don't say things like that out loud, because things do filter back. The world is a smaller place than you realize. So after the interview etiquette, thank the person or committee as best you can. Email works really well. Cards work better. You know, there's something magical about getting a card in the mail with a hand-signed card on the inside and a filled out one saying, thank you so much. Human writing still is much better than an AI sending the card as you go through, or an email. Cards work really well, especially when they're personalized as you go through. On large committees, ask someone to thank them for you in the process, but you're better off always making certain a card gets sent somewhere in the process, and that way there's a record and they can always report on that. Take care.